In a world that is growing in distraction, the ability to focus is becoming increasingly rare. It's a skill that, simultaneously, is becoming increasingly valuable. Its demand is rising while its supply is decreasing, to put it in economic terms. In this essay, we'll establish a philosophy for focusing and learn how we can get better at it. But before we discuss the tactical advice, let's construct a thought experiment that will let us get to the heart of what it actually means to focus. Imagine that our company, Robo Incorporated, has built an extremely complex AI that works in one of our company warehouses. Let's call it Robotry Tisitsa. Robo 3000 has been programmed to insert a key into a keyhole, turn it at a specific number of rotations per minute, RPMs, and produce as many boxes as it can. Because our AI is extremely complex and expensive, it's been programmed to sense any threats in its surroundings. A fire in the building, for example. In the event of an emergency, the AI should leave the building safely, so that we can avoid the cost of replacing it. However, the Robo 3000 must also communicate with the people in the building. It has to help them with lifting heavy objects, or in an emergency. We hope that, in the case of a fire, it will be able to accurately gauge threat levels, save as many people as possible, and save itself. Our company has also invested in an even more expensive and complex AI, the Robo 5000. It can update all of our Robo 3000s and make them more efficient. Because Robo 5000s are so expensive, we only have one. Furthermore, it can only update one robot at a time, and that process takes several hours. So, it travels around the building. And our Robo 3000s have to interact with the Robo 5000 to help maximize their productivity. When a Robo 3000 goes to interact with the Robo 5000, it leaves its station and doesn't produce any boxes. So, it must be careful not to leave its station without good reason. The Robo 3000s have to periodically communicate with the Robo 5000 to see if an update is worth getting. They have to determine whether the benefits of an update outweigh the loss in production. At this point in the thought experiment, I would like to lay out some definitions. Consider the action of the AI inserting its key into the keyhole, producing boxes, and ignoring all of the environmental stimuli. Let's call this a state of directed focus. A narrowed attention, providing an undivided attention while ignoring environmental stimuli. The opposite state will be called generalized focus, reacting to environmental stimulus. In a state of generalized focus, our AI will do things such as analyzing if anyone needs serious help, if there are any imminent threats, and communicate with the Robo 5000 to see if an update is worth getting. Clearly, maximizing the amount of time spent directing focus towards the production of boxes would produce the maximum amount. However, if the Robo 3000 stays in a state of directed focus too long, it might not catch what's going on in the environment. This could lead to a disaster, such as getting trapped in a burning building. Clearly, there's a dilemma here. Let's explore this problem further. How can our AI maximize its production of boxes, while also reacting appropriately to its environment? How does it decide how much time to spend in a state of directed focus, and how much time to spend in a state of generalized focus analyzing its environment? How can the AI separate a fire from someone cooking in the kitchen? How can the AI separate a trivial request from an important request? How can it run optimally? As the coders, we have to decide what actions the Robo 3000 prioritizes. There has to be a system for operating and a hierarchy of priorities. Here's an example of an operating system. For every 30 seconds, the Robo 3000 spends in a state of directed focus. It must spend 5 seconds in a state of generalized focus. During this period of generalized focus, the Robo 3000 has to prioritize the stimuli it detects in its environment and act accordingly. Now, how will it do this? What if we assigned it a point system based on actions, priorities? For example, 1. Helping others with menial tasks, low to no priority, 20 points. 2. Maximizing box production, medium priority, 40 points. 3. Helping others with heavy lifting, high priority, 60 points. 4. Saving its own life, higher priority, 80 points. 5. Saving the lives of others. Highest priority, 100 points. Now, if we code the Robo 3000 to maximize the amount of points it achieves each day, it should direct its focus appropriately. It will maximize the production of boxes, while also accomplishing more important tasks. If the robot does not maximize its points, that means it has been inaccurate in its ability to prioritize actions. There is a fault in its code. How does this relate to us? To change our ability to focus, we must, like the AI, change our code. We have to optimize our action priority point system. However, I would like to borrow some terminology from the philosophy of hedonism for our condition. Instead of maximizing points, you can think of humans as maximizing net pleasure. In this case, pleasure refers to any state that we would enjoy being in. The Robo 3000 uses focus as a tool to maximize the amount of points it achieves over its life. Likewise, focus is a tool we use to maximize our pleasure over an entire life. Like the robot, we do this through an accurate prioritization and understanding of its actions. Likewise, I argue that the same rule applies for us. Before we discuss how to improve our focus, let's take a look at some reasons why we can't focus. There is another definition to discuss here. People direct their focus all of the time, but it's not always towards what they want. Let's discuss some reasons why. Some people will find it difficult to direct their focus because they lead a high-stress lifestyle. This is equivalent to the robot being in a burning building. It will enter into a state of generalized focus, determine an imminent threat, and begin saving people or evacuating. It could not focus on creating more boxes amidst the chaos. It would be more pleasurable for it to save the people and itself. That's where it must direct its focus. That's the higher priority. I will argue that many of us are programmed in the same way. We lose the ability to direct our focus to what we want. Homework, for example, when our stress levels are very high. In other words, high-stress situations command our attention, like a black hole. They are high-priority events, and rightfully so. I think this is important to realize, because some people need to deal with their high levels of stress before they can focus on other tasks. Furthermore, I hope that it will encourage some compassion for those who are suffering. Sometimes, the students who perform the best are the ones that are the most stress-free, and not the ones that are the most intelligent. I believe it is also in our interest to help alleviate the suffering of the less fortunate, so that they may focus on non-emergencies, improve their situation, and contribute positively to society. Directing our focus for extended periods of time is much easier when we enjoy the task at hand. Think about things you may enjoy doing, such as watching a movie at the theater, playing video games, having a good conversation, making music, doing arts and crafts, or reading. Do you ever think about how easy it is to maintain a state of directed focus when doing these activities? This is likely due to the fact that we find these activities intrinsically pleasurable. It's not difficult to determine that a good conversation with a friend will be enjoyable, or that playing a good game will be pleasurable. We focus because we know that we will enter a pleasurable state. There is little to no uncertainty. I would now like to make a distinction between two kinds of pleasure: extrinsic and intrinsic. Intrinsic, pleasure derived from an activity itself, e.g., a good conversation. Extrinsic, doing an activity that leads to pleasure. Working a job you hate for good money. Activities that are extrinsically pleasurable are harder to focus on because the activity itself is not pleasurable. Not only do they not produce pleasurable states, it's often hard to determine whether they will lead to future states of pleasure. For example, let's say I work a job I hate and find it unpleasurable. I also don't know if I'm going to get a raise, if that raise will bring me any more pleasure, if I'll get a promotion, or if that promotion will bring me any more pleasure. I originally took this job because it gave me the extrinsic pleasure of money. Now, I'm more uncertain about the pleasure it will continue to produce for me. This job will become very hard for me to focus on, And instead, I will begin to direct my focus on activities that I know will produce pleasure, such as texting or going on social media. On the other hand, intrinsically pleasurable activities are much easier to focus on because, again, there is no uncertainty about the pleasure they will bring. This example does not map nicely onto our robot analogy because it describes an action our robot would never take. Our robot would never do activities that are extrinsically pleasurable. It can only function by doing activities that are intrinsically pleasurable. The last reason, I'd argue, is that many individuals have coded themselves to constantly seek small, short-term pleasures. This is equivalent to coding the robot such that it does not save itself, does not help anyone else, and never goes to get upgrades. It produces a consistent, predictable, and repeatable amount of pleasure over its life, but it does not maximize its pleasure. It may be in a state of directed focus its whole life, but to what end? Directed focus is a means to an end, and not an end in itself. In our example, maximizing pleasure is the end goal, and directed focus is the tool or means to achieve it. Now, how can we address all of the problems? 2 out of the 4 problems were solved above, which were dealing with stress and doing intrinsically valuable activities. Let's discuss the other 2. Habit has honed, abstaining from short-term pleasure seeking. The best way to change our code, arguably, is through our habits. By cultivating the ability to abstain from short-term pleasure seeking, we can focus on activities that produce more long-term pleasure. So, here are some practices that can help us build the habit of abstaining. Meditation allows one to embrace boredom and to not be bothered by it. It trains the brain to not seek out immediate pleasure in boredom. It allows the mind to stay calm when working on activities that require more patience to produce pleasure. This is the inverse of a to-do list. Instead of telling you what to do for the day, it tells you what activities to abstain from. The real difficulty is in adhering to this list. However, if you keep it out and in front of you, by using a Post-it for example, it can be a great reminder to abstain from short-term pleasures. But there is a problem with abstaining. Abstaining behaviors can be really powerful for training the brain, but I think they also have to be met with some skepticism. Let's assume that doing an activity will not give me any pleasure for 80 years. I start doing it at the age of 10. But when I hit 90 years of age, this activity will produce extreme amounts of net pleasure in my life. There's a big problem if I die before that. While trying to maximize my pleasure, I died with an absolute minimum. I call this the abstaining problem. To avoid dying with a minimum of pleasure, it's important to inject a controlled amount of short-term pleasures. Habit #2. Controlled injection of pleasure due before you die. One of the most powerful ways to inject controlled pleasure into your life is to separate it into periods where you pursue long-term pleasures and periods where you pursue short-term pleasures. Here are some practices that can help with that. Carefully select times in the day when you will check social media, watch TV, or play video games. Choose what devices they will be on too. Maybe you only check social media while you're on your desktop, and you only play video games on the living room TV, which you have limited access to. Be deliberate about when you engage in these short-term pleasures. Dictate when you use them. Don't let them dictate you. Imagine these 2 scenarios. I tell you to run hard for 200 meters, or I just tell you to run hard. Your time would likely be faster in the former case, because you know how long you'll have to expend yourself for. In the latter example, you will likely preserve your energy, because you don't know when I will tell you to stop. The same applies to pleasure. When you have clearly defined periods for seeking short-term pleasures, it becomes easier to focus during the other periods, because you know when the next break is coming. This brings us back to our robot analogy. The Robo 3000's coders programmed it to spend 30 seconds in directed focus for every 5 seconds in generalized focus. This ratio can be adjusted based on the environment and the robot's priorities. Similarly, you can experiment with different ratios of work and break focus and relaxation, long-term pursuit, and short-term pleasure. The key is to find what works best for you and your goals. Remember, focus is not the end goal. Focus is a tool for maximizing your pleasure over your entire life. The question isn't, how can I focus more? The question is, what should I focus on? And how can I optimize my point system? To achieve maximum pleasure, you need to define your own point system. What activities are worth 100 points to you? What are worth 80, 60, 40 to 20? Be honest with yourself. Many of us have coded ourselves to prioritize things that actually bring us very little pleasure. We chase validation, status, material possessions, things that we think will make us happy, but often don't. The Robo 3000's point system was clear and objective. It knew exactly how many points each action was worth. Our point system is much more complex and subjective, but that doesn't mean we can't optimize it. We can, and we must, if we want to maximize our focus and our pleasure. So here's your action plan. Define your point system. What truly matters to you? What brings you genuine, lasting pleasure? Be specific. Identify your code. What habits have you built? What automatic responses do you have to stress, boredom, temptation? Are they serving you or holding you back? Rewrite your code. Practice abstaining from short-term pleasure seeking. Build habits that support your priorities. Use tools like meditation and not-to-do lists. Inject controlled pleasure. Don't try to eliminate all short-term pleasures. Instead, strategically schedule them so they enhance rather than hinder your long-term goals. Find your optimal focus ratio. Experiment with different work break patterns. Pay attention to your energy levels and productivity. Adjust as needed. The world is becoming more distracting every day. The ability to focus, truly focus, is becoming rarer and more valuable. But focus isn't about forcing yourself to pay attention to things you don't care about. It's about aligning your attention with your deepest priorities. Focus is a tool. Use it wisely.